Hello, welcome to this new tutorial. Today we are going to talk about authority. This tutorial is divided into following points. First, we'll try and understand the meaning and concept of authority, followed by sources or forms of authority, then characteristics of authority, later types of authority, and last, distinction between authority and power. So, let us begin with the first point, meaning and concept of authority. The word authority is derived from the old Roman notion of auctor or auctoritas, which generally means counsel or advice. Therefore, the concept of authority involves reason and depends upon the capacity of reasoned elaboration. Thus, the man who possesses authority has capacity for reasoned elaboration. To put this in simple words, the man who exercises authority has the capacity to give clear, logical, and convincing reason for his decision or judgment. So, in short, authority basically stresses upon the logic and the reason to convince his or her decision. Well, moving on to definition. According to McKeever, authority is often defined as being power, the power to command obedience. Whereas, according to Herbert, authority as the power to make decision which guides the action of another. In short, the concept of authority conveys a sense of a duty on the part of its leader. Therefore, authority is always expressed for regulating external behavior of individuals or group of individuals by and through speech and written words and not by brute force. To elaborate this more in detail, we have an perfect example. The authority of parents rests upon the fact that the parents are able to give reasoned elaboration as to why the child should or should not do certain things. And when this capacity on the part of parent is absent, the parent may exercise force over their children but not authority. So in short, if I summarize the meaning and concept of authority, authority stress upon the capacity or a reasoned elaboration to make or influence his or her decision or judgment. Now, let us begin with forms or the sources of authority. According to Max Weber, the following are the source of authorities. First, traditional authority, then charismatic authority, and last, legal rational authority. Let us talk about traditional authority. The traditional forms of authority has existed right from the very beginning of the state. This form of authority has been to a great extent been a hereditary in origin. For example, after the death of the royal person, he is been generally succeeded by his eldest son as the king, who then exercise the traditional authority. Second, we have charismatic authority. The charismatic forms of authority is generally found in developing countries where specifically there is a low level of institutionalizations. Traditional structures are not democratic in form as well as in spirit. Therefore, paternal authority is always highly respected, and hence traditional thinking is challenged by modern political institutions. And last, the dichotomy is to some extent mitigated by a charismatic leader. So basically, charismatic authority you see more in democratic form of a state, especially in the early period of the state development. And then we have legal rational authority. The legal rational forms of authority emanate from the political office held by an individual where he is appointed through the prescribed procedure. To put this in a very simple words, legal rational authority is attached to an office which automatically extends to the individual holding that office. Now, this form of authority is generally found in the democratic system of government where certain authority are being given to a person who hold particular office for the welfare of the state and who exercise legal authority towards the state. Now let's talk about characteristics of authority. Now following are the characteristics of authority. First, legitimacy. It is the legitimacy which determines the effectiveness of authority. In short, legitimacy is very essential for authority. Second, dominance. Authority is the capacity of individual to command others. Therefore, an individual or a group which possesses authority exercises dominance over others. Third, informal. According to Frederick, authority is not power, but something that accompanies power. Hence, it is informal. Fourth, reason. According to Frederick, the man who has authority possesses something that could be described as the capacity for reasoned elaboration, for giving convincing reasons for what he does or proposes to have others to do. In simple words, the basis of authority is reason. We accept authority because it is based on logic. And last, accountability. The individual or the group which possesses authority is also answerable to some higher authority. In simple words, in a democracy, responsibility or accountability is an important characteristic of authority. Next, we have types of authority. Now, following are the types of authority. Point number 1, de jure authority, which is also called legally constituted authority. Second, de facto authority, which is also called person who in fact exercise authority. And last, intermediate authority, which is basically extra constitutional authority. Now let us discuss them in detail. Point number 1, de jure authority, legal constituted authority. De jure authority presupposes a definite system of law, rules and regulation. It determines as to who shall be competent to take decisions, make pronouncement, issue commands, and command obedience and perform certain acts in accordance with law. Therefore, de jure authority is exercised by means of speech and writing words and enjoys the right to receive obedience. The example is the Constitution of the state, wherein it gives authority to a parliament and to the president of the state. So, in short, all the leaders, parliament, president or the state, they enjoy de jure authority which is given to them legally by the constitution of the state. Moving on to point number 2, de facto authority, person who in fact exercise authority. Now, de facto authority is essentially concerned with the person whose words in fact are treated as a law and are therefore obeyed. Therefore, generally, de jure and de facto authority go hand in hand. And the best example here is the parliament or the president who enjoys the de jure as well as de facto authority because both parliament and a president have the legal constituted authority within the framework of constitution. Moving on to point number 3, intermediate authority, which is also called extra constitutional authority. Now, this is an intermediate authority between the de jure and de facto authorities. Kinds of authority is also referred to as extra constitutional authority. Here, it is held by a person not because of legality of a position or a rules as in the case of de jure authority, but because he or she is special sort of person. Therefore, this type of authority is solely based on the people devotion and dedication to the personal characteristics of the man, his acts, heroism and his unusual, unique or special ability. So in short, under intermediate authority, it is about the person characteristics and a persona what he carries, and therefore people devote themselves or dedicate themselves to follow that person within the bracket of extra constitutional authority. And now last we have distinction between authority and power. The distinction between authority and power can be explained in 4 points. Point number 1, authority is an embodiment of reason. 2. Power refers to compliance by force, threat, bribe, propaganda, and fear, etc. Third, there is a link between authority and power. And last, loss of authority without power. So let us explain them in detail. First, authority is an embodiment of reason. The man who possesses authority has capacity for reasoned elaboration. In other words, the man with authority has the capacity to give convincing reason for what he does or for what he wants others to do. For example, an American accepts the authority of their president as they believe that he has an access to information that others do not or should not have so easily. This gives him the capacity to give convincing reasons for his decision. Point number 2. Power refers to compliance by force, threat, bribe, propaganda, and fear, etc. Well, in contrast to authority, power is the way of regulating social behavior and conduct of an individual by means other than reasoned elaboration. To put it in simple words, by exercising power, a man secures compliance by means of brute force, threat, bribe, propaganda, fear of injury, or fear of putting obstacle in the way, etc. Third, link between authority and power. There is an intimate connection between authority and power. As long as the rule or system is respected by the people, the exercise of authority is relevant and adequate. Example, the government of India exercises authority because most Indians accept to be governed by law and rules. The government in such cases exercises both authority as well as power. For instance, the police, paramilitary, and armed forces represent power of the government in special sense. And therefore, it is essential that every government must have sufficient power to maintain its authority against those who refuse to respect it. Otherwise, a government based on authority but without power may be overthrown by a handful of armed rebels. And last, loss of authority without power. Authority in the state may decline or even disappear in the absence of power. Therefore, if a government does not have enough power in the form of military strength or armed forces, it will not be able to suppress rebellions or revolt. So I hope you have understood the meaning, concept, types, form, and characteristics of power and the distinction between power and authority. See you soon in the next tutorial.